Welcome to this virtual service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Waynesboro, coming to you from the beautiful Shenandoah Valley. Somehow we made it through the holidays such as we've never seen before. The ways we protected ourselves and each other are not all the same, but however we did it, we took precautions and had more distance and fewer people in the same rooms with us than we would normally have had. Maybe we used more technology than we've used before. Before Christmas we had snow, but sadly, no white Christmas. Kwanzaa is behind us for another year. New Year's Eve celebrations were less grand for many than usual, but TV and the internet allowed us to watch some magnificent fireworks displays and also some drone displays as the new year rolled its way around the globe. Many of us tried, maybe in scaled-down versions, to engage with our personal New Year's traditions, whether it was eating black-eyed peas and collard greens or something from your family of origin. We did our best to see the new year in even as COVID-19 is in full surge mode. And we passed another sad milestone in our pandemic experiences as more than 350,000 people succumbed to the virus, and the numbers continue to grow. But the vaccination rollout promises better times to come. And somehow, even as many of us are losing track of time, we find ourselves in the second Sunday of this new year, this year when we hope we will eventually find our way back to something that resembles normal. When it does, we will inevitably be changed. Our world will be different. So let's buckle up and prepare for our new year and our new world. This congregation recognizes and honors the person you are, all the aspects of your identity. We have formally committed to accepting in every aspect of our fellowship and our society people whose orientation or gender have been outside traditional norms. We have grown in our commitment to celebrate our differences as well. Race, ethnicity, economic status, political outlook, these too are parts of who you are that we honor and that increase the resilience of our spiritual community. Today we meet in this virtual space, but when safety returns and the pandemic becomes history, we look forward to seeing you among us in person as well. My name is Marilyn Nash, and I've been a member of this congregation since 1996. If you're interested in finding more about our fellowship or about membership, please watch for the slide at the end of the service that will give you contact information for the leader of our membership team or for Reverend Paul Oakley. Let us now light the chalice of our hearts with these words from Leslie Takahashi. All that we have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the brink of all that we aspire to create. A deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a deeper joy in the life we share. Welcome.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell a story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
We've just made our way through another really hard week. COVID-19 is surging and mutations of the virus are giving us new risks. Dr. Fauci tells us that if the program of vaccinations proceeds smoothly without a hitch, and if Americans behave in safer ways, that we might be able to be mostly back toward what we think of as normal by late September, October, or November. However, as we've seen, the rollout of the vaccination program has not been without quite a few hitches. Lots of people who particularly need to be vaccinated in the first round of vaccinations are refusing to be vaccinated. Even several frontline healthcare providers to COVID patients. And compliance with safety measures is still insufficient because so many people think their so-called liberty is more important than others' lives. So our long haul may turn out to be even longer. And we've had our losses, ones dear to us who have died during this time when a normal approach to memorials and funerals and gathering together to remember is just not possible. Wednesday was the deadliest day yet in this country's experience of the pandemic, and at the time I am recording this, the CDC reports that an American COVID death total is 356,005 so far, with new case levels also near all-time highs. Add to that the armed insurrection on Capitol Hill on Wednesday, with far-right agitators encouraged by President Trump storming in with weapons, breaking windows, rifling through offices, sending the building into lockdown and congresspersons into bunkers for safety. It was a dark day for America. You've followed the news and the analysis. You know what you think about what happened and what kind of follow-up there should be. We don't need to go quite there this morning. But as I was following responses around the country, I found myself returning to ways people of various religious faiths have traditionally said prayers for the well-being of the country and of its officials. I looked in the 1937 Joint Unitarian and Universalist hymnal and found 9 prayers for the country included in the liturgy of services there. The theology of those prayers is somewhat different from that of many 21st century Unitarian Universalists. But the petition of one of those prayers stood out in my mind, even if we might use different words in a couple of spots in it nowadays. This is that prayer. Deepen among us the spirit of understanding and goodwill. Take from the hearts of people and rulers all partial aims, unhallowed ambitions, jealousies, covetousness, and fears. Confirm the bonds of mutual trust and subdue the rivalries of race and power. Unite us in the things that make for peace, in the exchanges of merchandise, the pursuit of knowledge, the spread of liberty and good government, till the reign of justice be securely established, and righteousness and goodwill prevail throughout the earth. Amen. And as I thought further about the prayers for our country, I thought how there has for so long been a vacancy in moral leadership in our seats of power. So many elected leaders too often serve corporations or the rich over the well-being of the country as a whole. In a country with democratic elections, it is the responsibility of all of us to protect our institutions and processes and to elect people capable of true moral leadership rather than crass opportunists and people serving the aggrandizement of the wealth of the few and the power of the military-industrial complex we have so long been warned against. So I offer this morning, with just a few tweaks, a prayer for political leadership by Alden Solovi. We yearn for new leadership, for people of inspiration and insight, visionaries to build nations and communities in the image of our highest ideals and values. Stewards dedicated to justice, unafraid to face the challenges of our day. In particular, the challenges of inequitable division of power and wealth and well-being, so that our cities, our country, and all countries resonate with compassion and health, justice and mercy, kindness and peace. Bless our leaders with dedication and foresight, fortitude and imagination to solve the complex issues that threaten our future. May they lead us to a time when neighbors embrace and the communities thrive, a time when liberty and equity reign supreme. Source and shelter grant safety and security to all nations and communities, so that truth and harmony will resound from the four corners of the earth. Let the light of wisdom shine brightly in the halls of power, a beacon of hope for every land and every people. May these aspirations be made reality by our faithfulness and attention. Let us now hold silence, filled with intent and longing for justice and commitment to act to bring that justice closer. We hold in our hearts Chuck Guest, Aaron Milnes, and their son Duncan, and Chuck's mother Betty Guest, as they mourn the loss of Chuck's father, also named Chuck, and as Chuck cares for his mother in her difficult recovery from COVID-19. We also ask you to hold Walter Lazenby and me in your hearts. Walter's oldest child, Brenda Lazenby, died on Wednesday in San Antonio, Texas, where she had made her home many years ago. She was 61 years old. And let us hold as well all unspoken sorrows of this congregation, and our joys too, in our hearts together quietly.
Blessed are you, awakener, life of all worlds, who remove sleep from my eyes and slumber from my eyelids.
Blessed are you, generous creatrix, who stretches forth the earth upon the waters.
Blessed are you, sacred flame, who shines your light upon everyone and everything.
Blessed are you, wings of gold, who crowns my people all people with splendor.
Blessed are you, holy fashion designer, who delights in the way we dress ourselves as altars.
Blessed are you, nameless and infinite, who has made us in your image and reminds us that all bodies are sacred and holy. Boom, boom.
Blessed are you, liberation worker, who moves us to stretch and expand towards freedom.
Blessed are you, divine apple orchard, who delights in my delight and receives my pleasure as praise.
Blessed are you, the way, who meets me where I am.
Blessed are you, holy breath, who fills me with this gift every day.
Blessed are you, abundance, for helping me remember I have everything I need.
Blessed are you, source of life, who I draw upon for strength, and who reminds me that rest is a sacred act.
Blessed are you, fabulous one, who loves me just as I am.
Blessed are you, weaver of being, who shaped the human being with wisdom, making for us all of the openings and vessels of the body. It is known that we are miracles, and that all bodies are miracles.
Blessed are you, you of many names, for revealing infinite paths of healing.
Blessed are you,
you of many names,
for revealing
infinite paths of healing.
A History of Church, Including Yours, by Sean Neil Barron. One day your church was born. Maybe it was a gathering of saints called together for the common worship of a wrathful God, ceaselessly praying between bouts of decrying the evil of Christmas or dancing. Or maybe a few brave souls answered a notice in the newspaper, curiosity piqued by the announcement of a religion where free thinking and tolerance were bedrocks. No matter how it happened, your church was born, a gathering of people, humble, caring, anxious, and quirky all at the same time, who covenanted to be with one another on the journey of life, death, and everything in between. And so it began, a faithful few, beautifully imperfect, called to the central task, that human task of connecting, loving, and serving. It was just a baby, and yet it was thrust deep into the human condition, tasked to hold minds and souls, bodies and hearts along the roller derby of disease and birth, infighting and joy, and Christmas pageants, sometimes all of those at the same time. They gathered to hear the world broken open for insightful sermons, rejuvenating music, and a community whose fierce devotion to each other's well-being rivaled a mama bear's to her cubs. But it wasn't always like that, of course. There were the trying times, and I don't just mean Phyllis or Jack, those stubborn but lovable souls who inhabit the nether world of committee meetings. No, I mean the trying times, when the church almost split in half over the war or integration, or when the mill left the town vacant, or when the minister crossed that line and the people couldn't speak about it for decades. But somehow you were still here, still on the town common, still the church that everyone recognized, still the ones that showed up every time you were called on, still using the communion silver until you voted to sell it. New people came and they changed things. Small things, big things. Things that nobody noticed as it happened until suddenly it was hard to even recognize anything anymore. That was a hard moment, a tearful moment. And other things changed too. The proclamations about God, once heard loud from the pulpit, softened. Wrathful became loving. Distant became intimate. Mandatory became optional. After the war, the nursery and RE classrooms were overflowing. Each baby dedicated reminded the church of the incredible beauty of life and the gift this community, all huddled around baby, would bestow upon this child. The history of your church is more a story of the determination of love to break forth than it is about love of tie-dye or chalices, sermon discussions, or social justice committee meetings. The history of the church is the history of human enterprise, evolving in its sights and sounds, yet revolving always around its core. The history of your church is the gift of potential and momentum, of baggage and personality. The history of your church is the launch pad from which you spring into action or disarray. Each day your church is born.
Back in 2010, I wrote this poem in reflection on the ways our beliefs and spiritual practices are contingent on when and where we are born and live. It works on a cross-cultural meeting of ideas of a Japanese kamidana on the one hand, something sometimes called a god shelf, that place in the house where the special spiritual objects are kept. And on the other hand, a knick-knack shelf, a collection of tchotchkes. Kamidana. My grandmother's beliefs were hard concrescences of Protestant iconoclasm. Icon or rosary, votive figurine or candle, all threatened her spiritual equilibrium. Had she been born to different neuroses, she would have expressed her unquestioned faith in bronze, clay, paint, or wood, on an altar bearing an empty throne, or ikebana floral arrangement, or fruit offerings to the Buddha. She might have offered rice to ancestors, tied prayers on trees. Her kamidana, her god shelf, might have shouted, might have created space where spirits and deities would come, would move on water, would walk on ground purified with sea salt. Instead, my grandmother's God was banished to heaven, to abstraction, to a distant personalized spirit, and so she filled her God shelf with other objects, with trinkets, with souvenirs, memories of hard work and winter nights awaiting child sleep or passion. My grandmother rose before dawn, prayed in her kitchen without aid or placeholder, winging it, winging her way to God, watched over by earthenware chickens, her mama's hand-painted china, a plaster plaque made by her son Bobby when he was just a boy in vacation Bible school craft time. Crocs and gewgaws from the county fair looked down from where, a couple of centuries back, the Blessed Virgin would have stood. A cracked cream pitcher and Aunt Eva Mae's egg plate. On the icon shelf of past centuries, the God shelf, mementos of this life express the taste and loves of the woman in blue floral print who prayed piously on her knees beneath the kamidana. Rabbi Israel ben Eleazar, known by the epithet the Baal Shem Tov, which literally means the master of the good name, but really just means the guy with the best reputation. He was the founder of the Hasidic movement in Judaism. He was a larger-than-life presence who lived up to his nickname. So many stories were told about him, just as he too told many stories. The story is told that when he saw that his people were threatened by tragedy, he would go to a particular place in the forest where he would light a fire in a particular way, recited a particular prayer, and ask for a miracle to save the Jews from the threat. It is said that because of this special fire and the faithfulness of the prayer, the requested miracle was accomplished, averting tragedy. In the next generation, when the Baal Shem Tov's disciple, the Maggid of Mezrich, had to intervene with heaven for the same reason, he went to the same place in the forest, where he told the Master of the universe that while he did not know how to light the fire in that special way, he could still recite the prayer, and again the miracle was accomplished. Yet another generation later, Rabbi Moshe Leib of Sasov, in turn a disciple of the Maggid of Mezrich, went into the forest to save his people. I do not know how to light the fire, he pleaded with God, and I do not know the prayer, but I can find this place, and this must be sufficient. Once again, the story goes, the miracle was accomplished. When it was the turn of the Rabbi Israel of Rizhin, the great-grandson of the Maggid of Mezrich, to avert the threat, he sat in his armchair, held his head in his hands, and said to God, I'm unable to light the fire. I cannot even find the place in the forest. All I can do is tell the story. That must be enough. This story is often told without disclosing whether some miracle happened in response to the telling of the story or not. This leaves us with the question of whether it was, in fact, enough just to tell the story. In traditional Passover seders, people sing the song Dayenu. Its lyrics suggest that each thing that happened to further the positive outcome of the Exodus story would have been enough, even if the next step had not happened. But in that story, too, we are challenged to consider whether it really would have been okay if the Israelites had escaped Pharaoh's army and then died of starvation in the desert. And many people conclude that it really would not have been enough in the fullness of the story. Each deliverance was sufficient in its moment only because the next success in escaping tragedy would happen in that succession in time. Human civilizations have long been rife with Golden Age myths, the idea that somehow in ancient times, time shrouded in the mist of history and legend, there was a golden age when everything was somehow better than it is now. And then decay and loss set in. Things fell apart. Adam and Eve ate the fruit we often name an apple, and everything fell apart. They no longer had access to the luxury living in the cosmic pool house. Pandora opened the box, and every kind of disaster sent civilization crashing. Today, many Americans think of the framers of our republic as creating a really good system that has been unraveling ever since, even though we have, on average, better health care, better diet, greater personal liberty, greater opportunity, and longer and healthier life than most of America did in the years when the framers' ideas were still fresh. The early Puritans came to America having established a religious identity for themselves while they were still in Europe, an identity based on their authentic and life-changing personal religious conversion experiences. It was so central to all they understood as good that they established that testimony to such a religious experience as a requirement for church membership. But then along came their children or grandchildren who did not grow up under the same conditions as the earlier generation, who did not have that overpowering personal religious experience to which they could give testimony. Things were falling apart. A new approach had to be devised, so the halfway covenant was devised to find a place, even if one understood it as a lesser one, for more and more of the next generations in the community, first built on sharing that experience, that personal, deep experience. It was being lost. I remember when my great-grandma Bunting died. I was 12 years old, and it was just 4 months after my great-grandpa Bunting had died. I was close to both of them and was very sad at their deaths. But the thing that kept me up at night crying was not the simple loss itself of my dear great-grandparents, but the knowledge that with their death, nothing would ever be the same in the family. The gatherings with their nieces and nephews' families would not be happening without the family patriarch and matriarch to call everyone together. The standing order of family dinners presided over by my great-grandpa were a thing of the past. Ways I had known and cherished were falling apart. But as Linda Lohman says in Arthur Miller's play Death of a Salesman, life is a casting off. We all eventually shed our youth, our innocence, we experience those lost relationships. We all lose our loved ones and can only hope that that loss comes after a good, long life rather than too soon. But sometimes it is too soon. And it is true that much of the experience of life has to do with how we respond to such losses. Life is a casting off, a letting go. So one rabbi created a way of doing, the next in line remembers part but not all, then another forgets more and another more, and in time the narration shows that only a story remains where there had been content and action and moving parts. Is that enough? There's another story about the Rizhiner Rebbe, that last rabbi in that first story, the one where only the story remained for him and he hoped it would be enough. That later story suggests that even when things fall apart, even when things are lost, it's ultimately going to be okay because the things that once were are not the sum of this spiritual equation. And the story goes like this. A rabbi once poured out his heart to the Rizhiner Rebbe, saying, "What shall I do? As long as I am studying Torah and commentaries, I feel myself encompassed by holy light. However, as soon as I halt my studies, I feel chilled and surrounded by darkness. Can I ever make this light my own?" The Rizhiner Rebbe replied, "Whenever you are not occupied with Torah, then occupy yourself with a mitzvah. Then the light will not fail you." He explained, "The light you feel surrounding you as you study is light borrowed from the souls of great scholars. However, a light derived from your performance of a mitzvah is your own light, and it will never fail you." Now, we don't all study the Torah. The Bible might not be your thing at all, and we certainly do not all believe in the literal existence of some mystical light surrounding us. But think back to that earlier story. Someone created an approach that moves and inspires and brings good results, in whatever sense we understand that. For the Baal Shem Tov, it was a special place and a special fire and a special prayer said with a special devotion. And for me, the lesson of the story is not that succeeding generations had to do with less and less of this special experience, but that they failed to make something new as the experience they thought they should do dissipated before them. They could have innovated and innovated again, as the Baal Shem Tov did to begin it all. Instead, they let the experience become less because they seemed to expect it to be unchanged. The older Rebbe finally understood what he hadn't understood when he felt like all he could do was tell a story from the past. He came to understand that we get our spiritual benefit by contributing to the spiritual story, by being creators of what we seek. Study sacred text, and you are getting the light generated by those in the past. That is good, warming, and illuminating, but it can only take you a little way. It is by doing, by creating the world that should be, the world that can be, a world that is better tomorrow than today, that we experience the durable light of our own lives. We are living in a time when so many things feel like they are falling apart. Even before COVID-19, Trump supporters looked back at a fictional greatness and wanted it back. Trump opposers looked back to a fictional time when we treated each other decently and took care of each other and wanted that back. But those were times that never actually were. At least they never were in the ways that they are now imagined. Earlier times had the light that they created in that time, the light that was possible in their moment, mixed with doses, mixed with strands of what remained from an earlier time. And with COVID, we have seen so much fall away that once seemed essential. We can either say that telling the story of how it used to be is enough, or we can create a different tomorrow than we have known today. Creation of the new always also includes strands of the old, but we must choose to create something new that incorporates the things we have learned that could not yet dominate understanding in any longed-for past. And so I leave you with this benediction grounded in words by my colleague Aaron Stockwell. In this new year, let us be amazed. Let us search for new life and new hope in our midst. Let us nurture creativity in every form. Let us be reminded that new insights of the universe are always being made. In this new year, let us be amazed. And I add to that, may our amazement light a spark within us. May we be encouraged to create our own stories, to create the world we want for ourselves and following generations. And in so doing, the making, the creating, the acting, may we find the light and warmth that too often elude us when we depend most on the stories of the creating and the making and the doing that others have done before us. For the best days are yet to come, if we will usher them in. Amen, and blessed be.